So I am currently in actually slightly sunny Hertfordshire with Mr. Ian Griffiths of Sports Podiatry Info, drinking builder's tea. Can I show you? It looks like he's made me builder's tea, which is good. So it's northern tea from Southern Man.
This is Yorkshire tea, by the way.
Is it Yorkshire tea? It's even better. I'm not even from Yorkshire. Although my sister lives in Yorkshire, that's a whole different story. So I'm down in Hertfordshire because I have spent an amazing morning down at one of your...
You don't have to say amazing.
I do. No, it was amazing. It is amazing. I've actually been looking forward to this. We arranged this last year because it's something I've been meaning to do for a while, is actually come down and spend some time with you and see the magic of Ian Griffiths. I know. I said this to him before, and he turned around and said, "You'd be really, really disappointed." And actually, I haven't been. It's been absolutely amazing. So Ian has kindly said that he'll come on camera and answer a few questions. So we've got about 4 questions laid out, which hopefully he won't ramble on too much, or maybe have some nervous rambling, which is what he does. For those of you who don't know Ian, he'll give you a bit more of a potted history about himself. But one of the things which is going on at the moment is the PodChat Live Facebook page, which I will put a link to.
You're going to plug it?
I'm going to plug it, absolutely, because I think it's an amazing thing for podiatry. And we've talked, in fact, actually, okay, next question in. Tell us about PodChat Live. What is PodChat Live?
Yeah. Okay, so it's Craig Payne and I. Craig Payne, based in Melbourne, as you know.
I've heard of him.
You've heard of him, yeah. I'm sure. I think it's him that drags people in rather than me. and we're basically doing a sort of a Skype call with a third person of our choosing that week on a topic that they are usually reasonably specialist and expert in. And we're just putting that 3-way conference call onto Facebook Live. So the idea being, it's every week. It's about an hour long, 40 minutes to an hour. We intend to do it every week for this calendar year at least. So by the end of this year, we want an archive, a repository of over 50 hours, completely free CPD for everyone, on a range of topics from what we hope are going to be sort of world leaders in their field. So it's fun. It's
Which is why you haven't asked me, because you want world leaders. Absolutely. I mean, it's been brilliant. How many? It's 10 episodes.
We've had 10 episodes, yeah.
Which is brilliant, and we know that looking at the stats, it's been immensely popular.
Yeah,
immensely popular.
We're pleased with it.
As you should be. As you should be. I mean, the last one was Ian Lane and Ted, which went down really, really well.
It did.
Obviously, Belinda. Hello, Belinda. Belinda was on there, and I think at one point it became the Belinda Show with Ian and Craig.
Rightly so. She was amazing.
She was absolutely brilliant. But don't let that go to your head, Belinda, at all. who have you got coming up? It's weird because I was down here last night, which was Thursday, so you didn't do one last night. It's not because of me.
It wasn't.
It was just perfect timing. Who have you got this week?
So Sunday night we've got James Dunn, who is a running coach, sports scientist, who people may know through his Kinetic Revolution website and courses. An old friend of mine. I always enjoy talking to him. Just such a lovely guy and so knowledgeable. So he's Sunday night. In forthcoming weeks, you want me to give the game away? I mean,
go on, why not? Why not?
Forthcoming weeks, we've got some.
This wasn't meant to be plugging PodChat Live. This was meant to be something else, but we've got him started now. So
I'm milking it.
This might never see the light of day.
We've got some Orthoses Lab owners. We've got Martin from Firefly and Art from Footworks in Melbourne, and the 4 of us, myself, Craig, and the 2 of them, are going to be doing a chat about, sort of from a lab perspective. So we're going to talk orthoses, but not about what we like to talk about, which is pathologies, prescriptions, about the lab. How can we make their life easier? How do we make their life difficult? Just flip it on its head and look at it from their perspective. So that's the next week. Week after that, I think if I've got my weeks right, we've got Jill Woods, which I'm really looking forward to, about social media and marketing. And then the week after that, we've got a vascular episode with Martin Fox and also Dr. Petter Tan from over in Australia as well. So yeah, we're hopefully, what we thought when we started was we're going to do, because Craig and I are very much within our little niche of musculoskeletal and biomechanics and things. That's what we like. And I guess initially we thought this is what we're going to do. And what we soon realised is it's not really about what we want. It's about what the audience might want. So it was really Belinda's episode, if we're being honest, that opened things up. And it was so popular. And I genuinely learned so much from it, because it's not an area.
Have you started treating dermatology?
I haven't yet. No, I haven't yet.
Yeah. Have you your first verrucum clinic for about 15 years?
No, I haven't. And then then we sort of thought, what, this is a much better idea. Rather than it being a biomechanics show, it should be a podiatry show. So we've had the dermatology, and we'll have other dermatology ones as well. There's 52 weeks in the year. We're going to have to spread our wings as much as we can. So we intend to have wound care one, a diabetes one, a neurology one, probably some non-clinical ones but podiatry related.
Cool.
I wouldn't mind getting Forgotten Feet.
Debbie, if you're watching this, if you're one of the 3 people watching this,
and really. We listen to feedback, so if people email us or messages, we'll really just give people what they want. If there's someone they want to hear from, or a topic we haven't covered at the moment, because it's new, there's lots of options, and obviously as time goes on, we've got to try and kind of keep it interesting. So we're going to listen to the audience, but yeah, it's fun. Ultimately, it's fun, and it's free, right?
And I think that's the cool thing. And actually, the way I look at it is, I can just imagine some of the conversations you were having would be, we want to produce the kind of CPD that we would want to receive. It starts off being about you guys, because this is what we want, and then when it becomes bigger, when people get into it a bit more, suddenly you can start to spread it out a bit more.
Yeah, and I think that for me, the thing I love about it the most is that because we're live, and there's obviously nerves associated with that.
nervous rambling.
Not for you, because you love this stuff. I genuinely still don't get.
That's why it's focused on you. I'm just on the side here, out of the way.
But the beauty of it being live is that we run through a few questions. Sometimes I and Craig have written a few questions down beforehand, and then once the audience warms up, just like at a conference, no one really any questions after a lecture, and silence, and then you only need 1 or 2 hands to creep up, and suddenly that tidal wave occurs, doesn't it? Where suddenly you can't shut the audience up. And it's a bit like that, I think, on Facebook, where people listen and watch, and no one wants to ask a question, but after a few questions come in, sometimes you can't get to all of them in time. But what I love is that the audience has the ability to interact, engage real time, but also guide the discussion. So Craig and I are really just there as a vessel. It's not our show per se. It's about the guest.
You're bringing people together with your connections and your influence.
Well, we've been very lucky that so far we've had some really great people agree to come and give their time for free. And of course, that we're worried that may run out at some point, of course. But so far, everyone's been really generous with their time. It's going well. We don't really know where it's going to go. We like the idea of doing some from conferences,
we talked about that today, didn't we? We had that conversation just on the train.
I like the idea of sitting in the corner of a conference and grabbing 5 minutes with every keynote speaker. So for the people that can't be at the conference, they get to hear a bit about.
The problem is you've warned them now, haven't you? That's the.
But also, from a conference perspective, I feel like whenever I see really good social media, coverage of a conference, and there's a couple in the physiotherapy world that are superb at it, and I'm sometimes in clinic or sometimes at home, and I'm just catching up on Twitter or wherever it may be. All I want to do is be there. So it's great that I'm not, but what it makes me do is think, I don't want to miss that next year. So it may not go that way. It may stay what it is. We're not overthinking it too much. It started organically, and we are happy for it to just grow in whatever direction.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's fantastic. There you go. That was a very quick bit on Podcast Live. It wasn't meant to be going on that long at all. Okay, so I have a very, very simple question for you. You are a podiatrist. When did you qualify?
2003.
But you call yourself a sports podiatrist.
I do.
What is it? What's a sports podiatrist? Is it just, I fancied some random prefix and S was available in the alphabet. What exactly is it?
It's not a title, really, is it? It's not a protected title yet. It may become that way with the PG Cert in Podiatric Sports Medicine that Nat and Trevor are running at QMUL. And there's going to be, obviously a faculty of Podiatric Sports Medicine now. But, bear in mind, I called myself that in 2006, something like that.
Before I was even qualified.
2006, 2007. So, what I was doing ultimately was I was doing my Masters in sports injury. I was mainly seeing sports patients and working with sports teams. I love sport myself. If I'm not watching it or playing it, or I'm trying to have it in my life in some way, and it just felt like a nice sort of prefix. It wasn't protected, or no one else was, to my knowledge at the time. It wasn't really something that everyone was doing, but it wasn't illegal. It's not like calling yourself doctor or anything to.
It's not illegal, is it? Doctor's not a protected title.
Or consultant. These words that people get nervous about. So. When I first moved into the private sector on my, and started working in that sort of self-employed consultancy fashion, I didn't want to be a generalist. just my own personal thing. I wanted to be very narrow and very niche. So when I built my website, I called myself a sports podiatrist, and I basically targeted it so that if you came on the website, you'd think, oh, this isn't. If you didn't feel like you were sporty, you'd feel like, oh, this might not be for me.
Yep.
And that was a completely intentional move. And I had friends and colleagues advising me at the time, this is a terrible idea. You're not going to get busy enough. You're completely wiping out massive percentages of the population. They won't feel that they can see you. But it was the opposite effect that happened. And as I know that we've talked about, I truly believe that the more narrow, to the public at least, the more narrow your area of specialty, the more specialist you look.
Yeah.
And I have people coming to me saying, oh, I wanted to come and see you because I want to see someone who specialises in sports. Now, you and I both know every podiatrist can see sports people. So rightly or wrongly, it worked in my favour. I wasn't breaking any laws. I liked sport. I had a master's in sport. I felt like it was appropriate. I didn't feel like it was an inappropriate thing to do, but it doesn't mean I'm just a podiatrist, right?
Well, you're not a chiropodist, there you go. So you're not a chiropodist. But the interesting thing is, I mean, today, and one of the questions I'm going to ask you about what's your work week like, and today we've been down to Pure Sports Medicine at Canary Wharf, and this is completely different to the environment that I work in. I've got this little rural podiatry clinic in North Worcestershire, which does a bit of everything. It's very much generalist. Walking into that environment, it's instantly dropping. It's just wow. This is the kind of place you can work. And you were introducing me to people who it's like, he runs courses. I know his name off Twitter. But everyone's really down to earth. It was absolutely fantastic. And you work, how many days are you working a week now?
In clinic?
Yeah.
So I'm in clinic between 2.5 and 3 days a week.
Okay.
This week it was 2.5, but next week it'll be 3.
And you're working at different sites, different clinics across London?
Yeah, I work across 3 clinics. Yeah, absolutely. So in exactly the same facet, the sort of private, multidisciplinary MSK team. There's no instruments or autoclave. There's just gyms, plinths, Olympic lifting platforms.
There's not even sides on the couch. There's no. That's scary. I can see the health and safety people are going a bit mental on that.
We don't. We wooden floored, but if we want, we could have carpet.
Yeah.
It's just a nice environment and surrounded by really valuable members of a multidisciplinary team, as you met today. I mean,
absolutely.
And everyone brings something to the table, and deep down we know this is how people get the best care.
I mean, we had specialist physiotherapists, sports and conditioning coaches, sports doctors, amazing range of people, all within that arena. And I remember you said to me on the way, and you said, yes, people just drop in and just kind of ask your opinion. And it happened numerous times today. But can I just ask you a quick question about something? It was such a collaborative working environment. And that was I think that was absolutely amazing. I mean,
it's the truest definition of the word team. If you think about in professional sports teams, you have whatever sport, rugby, football is irrelevant. You have a medical team, and the idea is that you'd imagine them all sitting around that table and discussing a player on a case by case basis, and that completely exists outside of you need to treat someone, whether they're a banker, a lawyer, or an accountant, like they're a Premier League player. And it's completely achievable, and we're super spoiled there, as you saw with the facilities and the team, and very very fortunate to be a part of it. But we are the truest sense of the word team. As you hopefully saw, there's no hierarchy. So whether you're talking to the consultant sports physician who will be the first team doctor on the side of Harlequins tomorrow, or whether you're talking to the strength and conditioning coach who came to us from the EIS fencing, or the physios that doing PhDs and working on to deliver courses online, and all of those kind of people as well. It's like you're a team. There's no boss. There's no hierarchy. It's just a pleasure, and it makes my life super easy. And like I say, it's open door policy. So if you see someone's door open, you can dive in and ask them a question, or dive in and have a bit of banter. Or a bit of both at the same time. If you walk past someone's door and it's closed, it probably means they're with a patient or they're dictating a letter.
Or they're asleep.
Or they're asleep on the couch. Yeah, it's not that we do that. So yeah, I mean, super spoiled at Pure and at the other clinics I work as well, which are very, very similar.
It reminded me very much, and I said this to you earlier, it reminded me very much of when I worked in A&E, that you've got people of different levels within in terms of you've got your consultant, you've got your nurses, you've got your healthcare assistants, you've got your cleaners, your receptionists, but everyone is on the same level. Everyone's voice is important. Everyone's voice is heard. Everyone's acted on it. Is acting as part of a team. You're there for one reason, and that is to look after that individual in your care. And it felt very much like that.
You're right, even the admin team.
They were great. I mean, they were so welcoming on the way. Everything about it.
And we talk to them like they're not clinicians, admin team. That's not the way that works. They don't turn up for the day, and our life is hell. They're an important part of the team as anyone. So yeah, we're just super fortunate. Yeah.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. And actually, there was only 3 mentions of overpronation, which we won't go into now because everyone knows your views on overpronation.
They love to wind me up.
They love to wind you up. It was brilliant. The banter was absolutely fantastic.
I don't bite anymore.
Well, not unless they ask you nicely. Okay, so you became a podiatrist in
2003.
2003. Okay. I was still working in A&E at that point. Remember that very well, down in Oxfordshire. How did Griff become a podiatrist? I know you told me this. You told me this story last night, and it was a long story. Yes. So brace yourself. We're already about 3/4 of an hour in. But
you know this story. I'll try and abridge it because it wasn't. I mean, the most important thing to say is it wasn't the normal route, and not that I even know what a normal route is in podiatry, if I'm honest. Because everyone I speak to has a different story, but. A lot of people think, you do GCSEs, you do A-levels, and you want to, the thing I hear a lot is I want to be a physio and I didn't get the grades, and then I went into podiatry. That's not my story, and I certainly didn't grow up wanting to be a podiatrist or even knowing what one was. The short version, I was never particularly studious as a teenage boy. I was lazy, I didn't do homework, I didn't study. I was essentially the polar opposite of the way I am now. Maybe the way I am now is because of these experiences, but I was a very lazy teenager. I was a nightmare for my parents, and I was doing A-levels because I wanted to do medicine, and I applied to do medicine through UCAS as it was at the time, and I was told I needed 3 Bs at the time. Maybe you probably need 3 As now, right? And it was all good, but I just didn't do any work. I just didn't go to lessons, I didn't study, I didn't revise. And funny enough, I fell in biology, chemistry, maths, I fell just a smidge short of 3.
Just a smidge, that's not how you described it last night. What's a smidge these days?
So a smidge is officially referred to as an E and a U, and an E in biology, a U in chemistry, and in maths, I didn't even get a U because they wouldn't let me in the exam hall. I mean, the point here is, clearly, I was immature mentally. I was 16. I was just 17, whatever I was having fun. I was playing a lot of football, and I'd found girls, and life was great. But I wasn't into the books, and I flunked spectacularly. So I did what anyone would do, and friends and I drove down to Newquay, and we basically got in a tent and we bummed around and surfed for several weeks until such a time my mum called me back to Kent, where I lived, saying that she'd applied for a job on my behalf. This is the kind of mum I have. She's great. I think in hindsight as a parent now, I think what I must have been putting her through, flunking and then disappearing to Newquay. She probably thought, I had a ponytail, and difficult to believe, I had a ponytail at the time. I looked like
I can see it.
I looked like Simba. It was amazing. So she'd applied for a job on my behalf, and I got back and she gave me a sitting down and a talking to and said, look, you wanted to be a doctor, or, what's going on? And I was like, no, it's not meant to be. And she's like, how can you say that? You haven't tried, you haven't worked a day in your life. We don't even know what you're capable of. If you tried your best and you'd failed, we'd revisit, but you haven't even tried. So we really don't know what's going on. And I said, okay, well, what is going on then? She said, I've applied for a job on your behalf at the local hospital, Medway Hospital in Kent, as a student pharmacy technician. So hospital pharmacy, and it's like a 2-year apprenticeship where you go to you work 4 days of the week, and you go to college 1 day of the week. So it's a 5-day-a-week job, but you're in the pharmacy, working with the pharmacists, trying to learn as much as you can. You go to college and you do a BTEC or an HNC, HND, whatever can't quite remember the equivalent was in pharmaceutical science. And my mum said, and I got the job, I interviewed and got it, and she said, it's just 2 years, you got to start somewhere, give it a crack and see how you go. So I basically gave it everything I had and did pretty well. Well enough that I got headhunted by GlaxoSmithKline or Glaxo Wellcome, I think they were at the time.
Nice.
And offered a job in their lab. And I was mulling that decision over. And when I was back at the hospital, and I was now an official pharmacy technician, which I loved, by the way. Fascinating job. Really enjoyed it. Had some lovely, lovely people around me. And one of the pharmacists who I hugely respected, super smart, and she was like a bit of a mum figure as well. She sort of sat me down one day and said, like, "What's your plan?" And I was like, "Well, I'm qualified now, right?" She's like, "You're not qualified. You need to do something more. Like you need to go to university." And I was like, "Well, I've never really. I wanted to, but that ship has sailed." She's like, "I was 20, because I was 18 when I should have gone to uni, and all my mates went. I basically did 2 years of this. So I was 20, and I felt like I'd missed my boat. She said, 'You need to go and study pharmacy.' So I called a few universities and said, 'Can I study pharmacy?' And they said, 'What are your A-levels?' And I said, 'What?'
It could have been better.
And I said, 'I've got an E. Essentially, I've got an E in biology, and I've got this distinction in pharmaceutical science.' And they said, 'We just need proof that you've studied chemistry.' And a U is not proof you've studied chemistry, unfortunately. So I decided I was going to be a pharmacist. And the only way I could do it was to prove I'd studied A-level chemistry. And the only way I could do that, based on my working week at the time, was to go to night school once a week. And for those who know, if anyone watching who knows Kent, I was at Medway Hospital, which is in Gillingham. And the night school was like a college in Dartford. And I didn't drive at the time. This was 1999, I would guess. So I did a whole day's work at the pharmacy in the hospital. I got the train from Gillingham to Dartford. It was a 3-hour night school, and then you train back from Dartford to Gillingham, back to where my bike was chained up, and I rode home from there, got back about midnight. And the idea was to do this once a week for a year, intensive A-level chemistry, and become a pharmacist. And the point I'm getting to here is I got sat down and I was just, I've never liked chemistry. I love physics, love biology, obviously love maths and statistics, but I've never ever liked chemistry. And I sat there and I don't know if I can do this. And I must have had a look on my face like, and because the dude I'm sitting next to says, "Hey man, what's going on?" I was like, I hate chemistry. I don't think I can do this. He said, "What's your story?" So I told him my whole story. I'm doing this because I want to be a pharmacist. And I said, "What's your story?" He said, "I'm doing this because I want to be a podiatrist." And my response was, "A what?"
Yeah.
We all had. And he basically wanted to study podiatry. He was a bit older, and he needed proof of recent study. Anything that was more recent than I don't think he'd studied anything for 5 years. And at the time that whatever university he was applying to had said, "I just need more recent study." And just because of the way he worked, it wasn't the chemistry he needed. It was just the only class he could attend based around his working. So he was like, "I'm just doing this, and in a year when I've got it, I'm going to apply to be a podiatrist." And I was like, "What's that?" And pretty much for that this was the first time we'd been, that entire rest of that lesson, he didn't sell podiatry to me, but he was just telling me what it was. "This is what I want to do, and it's really fascinating. There's paediatrics, and there's geriatrics, and diabetics, and tissue viability, and biomechanics, and sports injuries, and you do nail surgery, and he was, even really long story, tried to be bridged here. I left going, "God, that sounds amazing." He essentially sold the idea of podiatry to me while I was sitting in a chemistry class because I wanted to be a pharmacist, or I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. I did a bit of looking into it. I looked in podiatry and I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." But within a day or two, I'd contacted a couple of the podiatry schools, Northampton, which is where I ended up going, and Southampton and Brighton, and sort of informally, this is again late '99, just before Christmas, just out of interest, next year's applications for September 2000 start. I've got a BTEC in pharmaceutical science that I've just finished, and I've got an E in A-level biology. Does that do me any good? And they pretty much said, "Yeah, we'll take you." It's podiatry.
That's podiatry, yeah, absolutely. What you can say, you can say 5 letters in a row.
The rest, as they say, is history. Now, I dropped out of the A-level chemistry class. Unfortunately, I didn't have to do it. I applied to do podiatry. I was accepted. I started September 2000. And there we go. The career goes. I don't regret it for a single day. As you know, I love what I do. I truly believe that if you love what you do, you never feel like you work a day in your life. And what I do not know is who this guy was. I genuinely don't know.
So we need to find out who that person is, don't we?
Here's the thing. He may be a podiatrist. He may not. I mean, if there is someone who's now a podiatrist who started in 2000, who remembers doing A-level chemistry at Dartford around 99, he's the reason I'm a podiatrist.
So if that person's out there, please contact us here on.
maybe he didn't go on to be one, but this stranger that I've met for 3 hours, and 3 hours of my entire life, shaped my entire career.
Maybe you sold pharmacy, and now there's somebody out there
He's a pharmacist.
who's a sports pharmacist. It could be. I would be really interested if anyone knows of anyone. If this kind of rings bells, and you think, I remember sitting next to someone who looked like Simba the Lion back in '99 and talking to them about my passion for podiatry. And now you're a podiatrist.
Luscious mane.
Get in touch. That would be absolutely amazing.
But I'd say that's a pretty. We've all got our own stories. I don't know what the normal route into podiatry is.
I don't think there is a normal.
But I mean, that's my story. And you promised me people are going to be interested in this.
People love stories. People absolutely love stories, and it's. I think stories are heartening. I mean, this is not something to go into now, but I think stories are heartening for a number of reasons because they give people hope. When you think there is only one way of getting between A and B, and yet you see that loads of people have done it in different ways from different backgrounds, and often in ways which were, or from places which are far worse than you are at the moment, you suddenly go, actually, there's hope. I don't have any A-levels. I got into podiatry with.
I mean, I barely do, right?
Well, but in fact, I might have not. I haven't got better A-levels than you, so I think it's a brilliant story. I mean, you've got there already 2 people who influence you massively on that journey. So you've got the lady in pharmacy, you've got the unknown dude at Dartford. Mm-hmm. Who else is a big influence for you?
Professionally?
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind is my friend and mentor, Dr. Simon Spooner. I mean, he's an incredible guy. He's the smartest person I know, and I never leave a conversation from him, whether we meet, whether we're face to face or we text quite a lot, we email each other, etc. I've never left an interaction of any kind with him and not been smarter. And he's got this, what I consider to be a wonderful teaching style. He's very Socratic in his teaching. So if you ask him a question, he won't answer you. He will ask you a question back to make you think about it yourself. And the answer to that question will lead you to the answer to your question. And ultimately what happens with Simon is you open up a chat, you feel a bit vulnerable. Midway through the conversation, you feel super stupid, but you thicken up your skin, you get through it. Because if you get to the end of the conversation, you will absolutely be smarter for it. And there's been lots of influences, indirectly as well, but the most direct influence on my entire career, and still to this day, we spoke 2 nights ago, is him. No contest. So
he's been a massive influence on where you are now.
Huge.
So if you've got now 15 years. Yeah, 15 years as a qualified podiatrist. Yeah. We had the other 3 years on of training. You've got, this is your 18th year of being around podiatry.
Yes, yeah.
So if you suddenly a portal opened in the kitchen here, and out of it stepped Ian Griffiths from 2003, and went, look, I've just got this. Takes the cap off. I've just got this degree. I want to be a sports podiatrist. Give me 3 things which I can start doing now, which will get me to that goal. Not maybe as quickly as possible, but will get me there in the best possible way. Mm. What 3 things would you tell little Griff?
So I think one of the things you said there is key, which is like, it's not going to happen quickly, right? Nothing happens quickly. So you've got to be patient about it. But I think the first one, off the back of what we just said about Simon, is you've got to find a mentor. You've got to find a mentor. You've got to find someone who you respect and you like, professionally, personally, that you've got a strong enough relationship with that you can argue, and it's not personal. You're scientists, you're debating, there's no hurt feelings. You've got to have someone who's straight talking and will tell you when you're talking rubbish, tell you when you're barking up the wrong tree. They'll call you. They'll always be on the phone whenever you need them. And ultimately, like, Simon is that person for me. He might not be that person for everyone, because obviously him and I have got fairly similar personalities and people are different, but you've got to find that one person. You've got to find a mentor that you look up to personally, professionally, and that will essentially guide you, help you, support you, open doors for you. And I ultimately think that's got to be number one. You've got to find a mentor. And if anything, maybe I didn't find one. I was very fortunate with my mentor, but I maybe didn't. Maybe I was going to say I maybe didn't find one quick enough. But maybe I wasn't ready for one sooner, right? Because I don't think
when the student's ready, the teacher appears. That.
Yeah. So I mean, it just felt like the right time, and hopefully, like you say, it's a pleasure for him to be my mentor. I'd like to think he would hope it would be a pleasure for me.
He will tell us if he will tell us if it is or if it isn't.
He'll if he sees this, he'll text me and just tell me I'm being soppy or something. in more
would you like a tissue
in
now?
Stronger language. So but that's what you need. That's the way I like to be.
So number one's your mentor.
I think you got to have a mentor.
Cool.
And it's got to be a mentor that works for you. You got to have that. Okay. You've got to have a relationship where you can argue, you can debate, you can. Someone who's just going to tell you when you're talking shit, which we all do, intentionally or otherwise. So got to have a mentor. Number one. Number two. I mean, you've got to read. And when I say read, I mean really, really, really read. I mean. As you know, I read 2 journal articles a day. Maybe it's considered excessive. I'm not saying everyone needs to do that. My wife thinks it's over the top, as she told you last night. But it works for me in my routine, and I enjoy it. I don't consider it. Some people like to read John Grisham, and some people like to watch Big Brother or also the EastEnders. And I genuinely, when I'm reading an article, see it in the same way. It doesn't feel like I'm still working, genuinely. So it works for me, but I think, and the thing is, because the breadth of interest, you sort of start to grow. You're always going to. I read 2 articles a day, every day, and I'm playing catch up constantly, which sounds ridiculous, but I think you got to decide what works for you. If 1 article a day works, or if 1 every other day, if 4 a week works, but you have to read. You can't think that when you graduate, oh, thank goodness, all the studying is done. The studying is not done. The studying is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong commitment. It sounds like an utterly silly thing to say, but although I've been doing it for at least a decade, in my mind, I'm thinking, there's 5 years. 5 years I missed out on there. So if I could tell my younger self something, it would be
start now.
Just start now. Yeah, absolutely. So do whatever works for you. I don't believe the excuse that you don't have time. Not you, sorry. I do not believe that people don't have the time. I believe they don't make the time, but I don't believe they don't have the time.
So that's number 2?
That's 2.
What about number 3?
Oh, I mean, they're the easy 2 for me, mentoring and reading. I guess what I would tell my younger self is, and I do this now, and perhaps I would have liked to have done it a lot sooner, is to spread your wings outside of podiatry as quickly as you can. And by that I mean, we're podiatrists, we graduate, we read podiatry journals, we read JAPMA, we read JFAR, we read the old papers, the great papers from, quite rightly, of Kirby, Dannenberg, Fuller. We're trying to osmose as much as we can in. But there's such a bigger world out there outside the walls of podiatry. And if you're going to move into sports, as you saw today, you are going to be in a team. You're going to be the only podiatrist, and yes, you need to be, completely knowledgeable of the field of literature within podiatry, because that's why you're there. But you're interacting with non-podiatrists, so you need to know a bit about their worlds too. You're sharing patients. You need to read about tendons. You need to read about. You need to go to physiotherapy conferences. You need to not just read podiatry journals and go to podiatry conferences. You need to think about everyone you want to be working with: physios, osteos, doctors, whoever it may be, rheumatologists, and you need to do the CPD that you think they'll be doing, their conferences, their journals. And I think that's probably why 2 a day isn't keeping me afloat, because they're not podiatry journals. They're not foot. As I said to you earlier, we don't treat feet. We treat humans with foot problems most of the time. We've got to think, more globally, more holistically. We have to read outside of the walls of podiatry. And I know that sounds obvious, but I think I would tell myself sooner rather than later, read more in volume, read more in breadth, get a mentor. all things that I do now, but probably that for the first 6 or 7 years, they've probably only had those in place for a decade.
I think you don't feel you need them. You've done 3 years of hard study. Why would I want to go and study again?
We all know that feeling.
I've worked hard. I need a break.
Even that feeling when you've got an assignment and you're building up to that deadline, you finish it, you hand it in, you're like, that weight off your shoulders, and then that couple of days of, I've earned the right to do nothing for a couple of days. Well, after a 3-year degree, people often say, I've earned the right to do nothing for a career. You haven't.
Sure, I said that after my master's degree, actually, yeah, same kind of thing.
And master's has got to come into, if I was allowed a number 4, I place value on postgraduate study. And that doesn't mean that it makes you a better podiatrist. It doesn't mean there aren't amazing podiatrists out there without masters, because there are, and we know them.
Yeah, we talked about that.
I just feel that we don't cover critical thinking, clinical reasoning in as much depth as we could, because that's not a flaw of the undergrad. It's just got no time, and I think that's what master's level, M level reading gives you, and that's utterly crucial to being any kind of clinician in this era.
It's a way. We said this yesterday, that when I did mine, it was something. I remember my dad said to me, how much more money are you going to earn from having a master's degree? And I just went, no, because that's automatically the way people think. But what it did for me is it gave me the ability to talk to people at that level about subjects in more detail and be more critical in my thinking. And it was only a good thing. It was only a good thing. I expected a fanfare at the end. I expected to finish it and nothing. It's a real. In some ways, it's a real anticlimax. I don't know how you felt about that. It was a real anticlimax, and that's really sad. But it was an essential thing to do, and it's lovely to get new business cards with the extra 3 letters on it.
The post nominals.
But just to have gone through that crucible, that experience makes a massive difference.
I took more from the experience than I did the bit of paper or the post nominals, and you're not going to see an immediate change in your career or your salary, but you can't always put a value on what that will do for you. And I don't know for sure, because again it's so difficult to audit, but I'm certain that some of the opportunities you have may well be as a result of that. You don't know for sure because no one ever formally tells you, but there was no fanfare after mine either. I remember my first thought being, I want to do a PhD. And I remember my wife's face. She's like,
just watch out. And
I remember my wife's face saying, "No, we're gonna have a family now. We're gonna," and that's probably hard on the PhD anyway, right? It's utterly. But I'm in a place in my life now where the only unfinished business for me. Well, not the only. There's lots of unfinished business, but the main unfinished business, academically speaking, is the PhD that I. And deep down, I owe it, even though it's not, having the title doctor, that's not why I want to do it, but my 16-year-old self that wanted to be a doctor.
Interesting, yeah.
That then flunked and went off to the Newquay to surf, maybe one day it'll come around and be like, well, it's on the post that comes through the door at least. It's not what I want to do, and I actually just love. I just love research. I'm weird. You know this. I love research. I love reading. I love studying. I love writing. It's my favourite thing to do. This is why I write blogs. It's why I write. I try and do a bit of research.
Because the video is a new thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural progression, isn't it? I've always been most comfortable behind a screen typing or behind a pen writing. That's where I can take time to think about things. I can write them and come back to them and modify them. And I'm not a huge fan. I do it quite a bit, but I'm not a huge fan of public speaking. I mean, you've seen me speak, and you've seen how nervous I get beforehand. I get terribly nervous. I don't sleep well for a couple of nights before. Someone told me the more you do, it will be okay. It's been 6 years now I've been public speaking, and I've been fortunate enough to do it in various conferences in various countries, and it is not getting easier. I still have that horrible physiological response. It's my least favourite thing to do, but at the same time, it's not something I will ever say no to, because it has to be done.
You described it like a roller coaster.
It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, you come off it. You come off at the end, and you're just like, right, I want to go back on again.
Yeah, and what I tend to do when someone asks me to speak somewhere is just immediately say yes. Because if I think about it and think about where's that, or how big's the crowd going to be, am I going to get a hard time, blah, blah, I just say yes, and then it's a problem for future Griff. Yeah. So it's my least favourite thing to do, and videos are a bit like that. They're an extension of that. I'm not super comfortable on camera.
You don't know what people are going to ask you.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not one of those people that likes the way I look. I mean, I don't know. I'm comfortable on those things, but I'm just not super comfortable speaking on the camera. But they've got to be done in this day and age. If I'm passionate about research translation, which is what this is really all about. Giving people access to research.
You have to be out there talking about it.
Giving giving people who don't have the time or can't make the time, or don't have the access. Or if they have that time and the access, they read a journal and they don't know, they're just not familiar with the language. It's about saying, well, that's not the only way to disseminate information nowadays. We've got blogs, videos, infographics, and I'm deeply passionate about giving something to the profession that's essentially, given me quite a bit as well.
So this profession which you've given a lot to and has given a lot to you and gives a huge amount to a large amount of people, where do you see it being in 5 years' time? And that's the question I always ask everyone. It's the crystal ball view of where do you think it's going to be?
I mean, so I don't know. Is the honest answer. Obviously, I don't know. But
that's no good, is it? That's the video gone down.
Although I'm on the forums, the Facebook groups, etc., and I lurk and I get involved in some things that I feel I have to. I try and swerve the politics. So I'm aware of the politics of our profession and everything, but you'll rarely see me engage, interact, or post on any vaguely political thread. It's just one of those time, risk reward things with my own time. If I'm trying to balance busy, clinics and research and family and reading journals, and being online and doing my own social media channels, I just have to stop doing things at some point. So politics isn't my thing. And this is essentially, to my mind, a sort of political question, isn't it? Because where we are in 5 years really depends on, I don't know what the outlook looks, but certainly from what you hear from some of the admission numbers at universities, within 5 years, 50% of them could be closed. That's certainly what the suggestion was.
Isn't it?
When we were in Liverpool at the Society Conference, that was certainly one of the take-home messages, that the universities are businesses and the loss of bursaries and all the other things I don't like to talk about because they're politics. But, where are we going to be in 5 years? I mean, I suspect what we're going to see is a dramatic reduction, unless something changes, in the numbers of new grads, which isn't a problem in 5 years, but it's a problem in 25 years.
Yes.
And I don't really know what that means, but I think there's no denying it's going to be a factor. I don't think we're going to be extinct necessarily as a profession in 5 years, but if something doesn't change, that it could head that way. I think we have to go down the route of specialism. I don't really know what that means, because already we're specialists, right? We're the foot specialists. But
are we?
Well, yeah. I honestly just don't know how to answer the question in an intelligent way.
No, it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. And this is the question I ask everyone. Whoever gets on camera, I ask everyone the same question.
And there's probably been far superior answers to the one I've just given.
There's been so much change in podiatry in the last few years. There's been that real kind of groundswell of a movement forward. But there's still, at the same time, there's still that disorganisation. And there's still people who are very much tied to the past. There are very people who want to move forward to the future, but we're only as strong as the weakest in our profession, and we can explore change theory and all kinds of stuff to get these people on board. And there's people like you who I would consider to be early adopters. You're the Apple fan who, when Apple turn around and say we're going to invent a new eyeball, you turn around, I'll have it, I'll just have it straight away. Whereas other people need to be convinced, and then other people will just they will get dragged along when there's nothing else going on. My fear is that we're going to end up with too many people holding us back if we're not careful. But that's my view. But I think we've made some really good inroads, and I think we've got so much that we can do to move things forward.
There's probably lots going on I'm not super aware of as well. I know the college have got some apprenticeships. I haven't really, like I say, looked into what that means.
There's a whole host of things.
I'm just grateful that we've got people amongst many like Emma Cowley, who, you know, the more people like her in our profession, the happier and more relaxed we should all feel, because the work they do behind the scenes, we don't know half of that. We probably don't know 80% of the stuff Emma and colleagues are doing. The fact they're doing it means that the less political and the less sort of, I guess, motivated in that way, like me, can sort of sit back and relax. So, you know, really...
You can't sit back and relax.
Well, as far as the politics goes. Yeah. There's too much I try and get in here and keep in here that I can't already. You know, I'm at maximum. It's like an iPhone that every time you try and take a photo, it's like, I'm afraid you're going to have to choose something you want out if you want to put something, you know.
That's why you need that new Apple eyeball.
Yeah.
That will help you.
I'm one of those iPhones that's completely out of memory. So every time something new wants to go in, it might be at the cost of something else. So I have to really think carefully about the stuff I want to sort of ingest. So the politics, the discussions about bursaries, the discussions about health practitioners, there's no space in here. So I just disregard it all.
Okay.
Ostrich,
yeah, stick your head in the sand, that's it. At least it doesn't mess your hair up. Okay, I do have one more question for you, because of course I've been thinking, this is only meant to be, I mean, we've been on it 45 minutes, wow. Literally 45 minutes.
Pod Chat Live.
Yeah, sorry about that, yeah. And only 3 people will watch it anyway.
Going to watch it, yeah.
Well, no, I'll put it out there and see. My mum will watch it. She'll think, he's a nice boy, I like him. On your Sports Podiatry Info page, you are about 8,800 likes, followers at the moment, which I think is absolutely amazing. I remember you saying, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 doing competitions, and we had some people won some books off your now famous bookshelf. And your bookshelf is just, I'm in awe of your bookshelf. It's beautifully organised. It's amazing to look at. What's the...
You've got low battery.
Have I got low battery?
Yeah.
Oh, it does that. It does that anyway. We can just click on there. Low battery is absolutely fine. I can charge it in the car in a bit.
That means we have been talking.
It means we have been talking, absolutely. What one book at the moment, I know it's really difficult to kind of narrow it down to one book, but one book at the moment are you kind of reading, or which is really sort of key in your hands at the moment? If you when you've kicked me out the door later on and you sit down and wait for the family to turn up, what book are you going to sit down and read?
It's the one. So as you probably saw in the study and just here, all the books on the shelf in height order. But there's one that's there's one of them at the moment that's on the desk. I think one of my kids tried to grab it yesterday, not to read, to clarify. And it's a book called Structural Mechanics, and it's not a podiatry book, as they rarely are. It's an engineering book, and it's a book about structures and about how they respond to load. Because that's all the human body ever really is, a structure made of different tissues that respond to different loads in different ways. And the reason I've got it is, again, thanks to Simon, really. I mean, the reason I sort of got it off the shelf is because it's been on the shelf for a while, collecting dust like a lot of them have. And we had a chat a while ago about, I can't remember what we had a chat about, and over text he sort of said to me, we all focused on kinematics and alignment and position for decades, weren't we? And then I think most people are pretty much up to speed now with the fact that actually maybe we've forcibly given them a bit too much attention at the cost of other things like kinetics or neuromotor effects, and placebo and psychological effects, etc. And I've definitely been guilty of this, where you swing the pendulum too far the other way. So we focus on kinematics, and then we go, okay, maybe they're not quite as important. Maybe posture and alignment isn't the whole beast. We swing the pendulum the other way, and we're like, now we're going to talk about kinetics. And this is coming back to why you need a mentor, and why you need a mentor that's going to call you on this. And Simon dropped me a text, going quite rightly, reminded me that we can't separate them. We cannot separate them. And when you look at the detractors of or those people who have criticised tissue stress theory, to give it its title, their concern is that you're completely disregarding structure, alignment, morphology, and you're only looking at forces. But you're not. So Simon sort of, got me back on track and sort of said, firstly, it's inappropriate to separate them. When have you ever opened up an engineering book and they're talking about forces, but they're not considering the structure as well?
Yeah.
Because the structure will absolutely dictate how it responds to force. And it just reminded me that that's not a terrible thing to reread. So that's the book out at the moment. It's an engineering book on how structures respond to loads, external loads, how the internal changes they undergo. And it's stuff I know and I've read, but like I say, you've got to reread this stuff. It's an ongoing journey.
It's not by Enid Blyton either, is it?
No.
I was expecting it's going to be an Enid Blyton book.
I wish it was. It's by a guy called Durko. It's a great book, and you probably pick it up on Amazon for like a lot of these books. The great thing about engineering books, when we look at sort of, let's take podiatry books. There's a rather famous one published in 1971 that gets a lot of attention. We won't mention that. Let's not go there. It's not that kind of. But the reality is, you could go online and buy it. But really, if you're buying it now, you're probably buying it because you want a copy on your shelf, or you want it as a historical reference point, or you probably should. I mean, I've got a copy on my shelf. You probably should have a copy to read what was actually said, because there's been too much time now that actually what some people portray as what was said isn't what was said anymore. So, but the reality is, if you want to be so totally up to date, that probably isn't the book to read because it's too old. With engineering, you can go back as far as you want. Not much changes, because there's no theories in engineering. Not theories like we have. There's no paradigms or theories that are open for discussion. Engineering is unequivocal. It's physics, the laws of physics.
So you're not going to get people who say, I'm going to go and build a bridge using the Bard Kingdom Brunel paradigm.
It's like, what paradigm or theory do you use to build buildings? Well, we call it engineering and physics. We call it science.
We call it forces and load.
So we'd love to find ourselves in a position where we were talking about the lower extremity like that, but we won't. So I think you can pick up great engineering books that were published a couple of decades ago for a few pounds. I mean, I've got about 20 engineering books, and I don't suspect I paid more than £5 for a single one. Pick them up at charity shops like Amazon, second hand a lot of the time. But that's the beauty of engineering, and they all explain it in a bit of a different way. And like I say, you have to teach yourself engineering as a podiatrist. We're not going to be taught it at undergrad. We absolutely need to know it.
Yeah,
you got to teach it yourself. I mean, one of the books is one of the for dummies range. Engineering for Dummies. Start there. That's where I started. That's the book I'm reading at the moment. Structural Mechanics.
There you go. Amazon are going to run out of copies of
Rock and roll on a Friday
night. Yeah. We've talked for 52 minutes, and actually it's getting a bit grainy. It's getting a bit grainy because the light's going down as well.
I think we've.
I think it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Who thought that you'd have that much to say, apart from me and everyone else who's watching,
and but anyone who knows.
Anyone who knows it got. So it's no. I've had an absolutely fantastic day down here. I'm far later than I should be, and I'm going to go and sit in traffic on the M1, which is cool. It's not a problem. No, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking me around Pure Sports Medicine as well, which has been brilliant. I'm not going to say that everyone who wants to come down should do, because that's not up to me.
Say that.
But what I will say is that there are loads of podiatrists out there who do some really, really cool stuff. And if you're interested in spending time with people, just email them, contact them and ask them. Because the worst they're going to say is no. But I think most podiatrists who are worth their salt will not say no because they want to help the profession. So, yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you, mate. It's been good.
Pleasure.
Cool. Right.